Welcome to the Women Get Funded show, where we are dedicated to empowering women founders to shatter barriers and achieve exponential growth and funding for their business. Join us on this inspiring journey as we illuminate the path to unlocking opportunities and prosperity for women-led enterprises. With only 2% of venture funding going to women-led businesses and a mere 3% of women-led companies crossing the $1 million threshold, these startling statistics highlight the need for change. I am Coco Selman, 5-time founder, impact investor, creator of the Force for Good business system, and your host on this transformative journey. In each episode, you'll meet a trailblazing woman leader. You will meet venture capitalists, CEOs, successful founders, and experts in scaling business growth. Our purpose is clear. We are here to open doors and provide women founders with invaluable access to advisors, investors, and visionary leaders who share our commitment to creating a better world through women-led business at Women Get Funded. We see a future where tomorrow's Amazons, Mercks, Microsofts, and Home Depots are born right here, led by women. They represent the future face of business, and we're here to make it happen. I believe that women-led business is the most powerful, transformative force of our time. Together, we make the world better through business. Are you in? Welcome to the Women Get Funded show. We are dedicated to empowering women founders to shatter barriers of growth and funding for their businesses. Thank you for joining us today as we illuminate the path to unlocking opportunities for prosperity and growth in women-led enterprises. Today, we have a very special guest for you. We have Ann Bianco, who is a seasoned SaaS revenue leader and visionary in enterprise B2B environments, digital transformation, and customer success. Her extensive experience includes over 16 years in various roles. Actually, it's more than that, 21 years in various roles at Oracle and leadership positions at cutting edge tech companies. She functions now as a fractional CCO and board director and board advisor. She specializes in leveraging AI and machine learning to enhance customer engagement and drive growth through innovation SaaS applications. So Ann is here as a strategic leader known for developing long-term profitable relationships with C-level executives at Fortune 100 companies. She champions customer success to foster product adoption and client expansion. We're going to talk a lot more about that later. So she served as a board director and advisor with several companies, including Argoid.ai, an AI-driven insights platform, Swarm Vision, a platform that assesses, drives, and trains and retrains innovation talent. And she's been involved with Upward Women, Watermark, Oracle, Siemens. Oh my goodness. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us today, Ann.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here, Coco. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. So as we always do, we like to start out with the question of what is one book written by a woman that has significantly influenced your life?
Okay. Thank you. So I've thought about this. It was hard for me to select one book. So I have a theme and 3 books. All right. So the theme is courage.
Wow.
And Brene Brown, I read all her books, and she has this quote, courage over comfort. So, I mean, in all the kinds of, capacities that women are in, it seems like we're always being confronted with how to kind of get through the next obstacle. And then Cindy Solomon, who's been a really good mentor and friend of mine, has done these courageous leadership workshops. She's helped me through so much in my life in terms of just gaining that kind of, power and courage. And then the last book I just finished was Kelly Stephen Ross' book, Valley Girls.
Oh,
That she talks about, kind of going from a theme of, sticking to a theme of abundance instead of scarcity,
uh-huh.
which is very relevant to our discussion here since women only have, 3% of VC funding. So it takes a lot of courage to kind of keep down on that path. Long answer to your question, but kind of all woven into the theme there.
I love it. And it's these are great examples. So we have Brene Brown, Courage Over Comfort, and she's got several great books, Dare to Lead, right? I'm trying to think of the next one off the top of my head, but there's several that are so great. The courage, the vulnerability one, I can't think of it. Uh,
Right.
and courageous leadership, and then Valley Girls. So I hope everyone will take a chance and pick up copies. We really like to, on the Women Get Funded show, we really like to bring out the sound and the voice of women. And we're so conditioned to be surrounded by other voices that it's important to seek out women's voices on leadership and business. And I appreciate these suggestions so much.
Awesome.
So tell us more about your journey and kind of how you got from, um, you know, Boston. I know you went to Boston University,
Yeah.
and my husband went to Boston
Oh,
University, and then you worked for a couple really big companies, and
yeah.
and then you kind of moved into the startup world, and you've
Yeah.
got a theme of working to support women. Tell us about you.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't want to bore people with because it seems like so many years, but yeah, I did grow up on the East Coast. And I did actually originally start my career as a special ed teacher.
Oh,
So, yeah, so my master's is in educational administration, but from BU, but I, went into sales as a very young woman. And from there, I ended up just pivoting into um, large corporations like Harris and then Siemens. And so I found myself that it was a really good match to my skill set being in
yeah.
these corporations.
Mhm.
Since I later found out through Swarm Vision and this assessment I took that I'm an optimizer. So, which I can talk about that, but I sort of just fell into it. So, in my comfort zone, working for large corporations, Siemens, Oracle for 21 years, uh, lots of growth opportunities, obviously at a large company like that, and then from there, took a little bit of a break, which was great, and I highly recommend that for a couple of years, and then went to a startup. So I went from working for a $47 billion corporation to an $8 million Series B startup. Like, it was so completely different.
Yeah.
So, a lot of learnings there for myself, for others, for life in general. So, that's kinda at a really high level, but the sweet spot that I have been in always in all of those functions was some kind of customer management function driving revenue.
That's wonderful. And it's so important because it's at the very heart and soul of why a company exists, right? To be of service and create value, right? Um, okay, so I'm gonna come back, but I have to hear
Okay.
more about this swarm vision optimizer.
Okay.
Tell
Yeah,
us about it.
so Susan Bergani's the founder of Swarm, and a, it's an innovation management talent system for innovators, and her customer base is all Fortune 100 companies like Colgate, Pepsi, the Army, the Navy. So all these sort of big, large legacy companies that are trying to kind of focus on retaining their innovators instead of losing them to sort of startups. So it's understanding that talent. So I have been working with her for a number of years, just in all of her kind of customer success motions. Uh,
Yes.
with in the process of all that, really enjoying her customers and working with her as a female founder. So it's been a real positive experience, hopefully for both of us, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. So you're an optimizer. Is there like some quiz we can all go online and take? Is that something?
Well,
Yeah.
I could send the link out if she approves it. It's a pretty um it's quite an assessment, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I turned out to be a connector, um, a driver, and the third one was, kind of getting things done. I can't remember the word that she used for it in an optimizer, but it completely fit with all the jobs I've ever had without even really thinking about it because in everything I've done, I've been kind of pulling people together, connecting them, and then driving them for results.
Yeah.
And optimizers are the people who kind of look for efficiencies and best practices. So, anyways, it's a great application. I can send more information on it later.
That'd be great, and I'll put it in the show description notes. Um, so you got to have that early experience of being in big corporate, and I actually started in Arthur Anderson Business Consulting was where I started my journey. And, you get an education, right? And you
Right.
get a picture of kind of, um, you know, buttoned up, how businesses run, that kind of experience. And then, when you go into a startup, in a big company, everything's defined. In a little company, nothing's defined, right? You're trying to figure out all the pieces. There's so many
Yeah.
unknowns, right? What were some of the observations that you sort of discovered as you made that leap? And what were things that you immediately saw were ways you could support a smaller organization having come in for that bigger perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, and the CEO who hired me, Umesh Sachdev, he was very, very thoughtful when he hired me. He kept saying, "It's really different. It's really different, Miriam. It's really different." And I'm like, "Okay, okay, I'm up for this. I'm up for it," which I was. I loved the experience.
Yeah.
And I think as much as people can tell you how different it is, I don't think you really know until you're there. Because I'm actually talking to a friend later today who was going through the exact same thing, who's at a startup, and she's like, so I guess you just don't realize like how many hats you have to wear. And then it's kind of like this web where you go in and you start to do something and then you realize that, all these other things kind of aren't connected. So maybe the opposite of a web. So they're not connected because they're not built because nobody thought about them. So if you start down one path, then something else has to be built. And so, then at the end of the day, you're like, holy cow, what did I accomplish?
Yeah. And where do I begin? Right. Because I think one of the challenges of being an early stage founder as you're growing through the stages is you have to accept that you don't have all the connections and you haven't defined everything and you don't have every single policy and SOP put together, but still you have to keep going. You can't wait until the full plane is built. You have to fly it and build it at the same time. But you have
Right.
to know what's the thing you need to build onto the plane next to make sure you don't crash, right?
Right. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So
Yeah. And
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I'm doing this consulting assignment right now for an early stage fintech company. And one of the things, it's the same kind of scenario where, everything's moving really fast. But one of the things they do so well, there's many things they do well, but one of the things is they have a really tight culture of supporting one another, and helping them. And so there's no kind of like, blame, like, and they really they're really truly like if a person doesn't have us, because in a big company, if you don't have a skill set, there's always somebody there to catch your back or it's defined, right? Like
Mhm.
if you're running sales, you always have a sales ops person that does all your numbers for you. Well,
Right.
at a startup, those you don't have that. So they really lean on one another. Um, and it's to me, it's refreshing to see it, and it's kind of inspirational in a way too. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that.
I think you're so right about it. I think it's an important piece of the of a culture for a startup and really for any company. But if you can have that mindset, then you can iterate more quickly without fear that you're going to get shamed or blamed for something that didn't work because you have to try lots of things,
Right,
right?
exact
Right. And with customer success, product adoption, and client expansion, like all those types of things, marketing in general, customer connections in general, there's a need to have data. And
right,
some data is really hard to get, right?
right,
You experience that, right? Or you really like to have all these metrics so you can see what's working and not. But sometimes it's really hard to get that data. Like you don't have a marketing person, you don't have a data analytics person, you don't have a system that's going to, you know, grind all that information out for you every week. So
right.
how do you help these early stage founders figure out where to begin and make impact?
Well, it's so interesting that you talk about the data because that's really what I'm doing and with this company that I'm working with is having them look at all their data. It's a customer success, customer support kind of go to market project, and we're looking at all the data that's coming in from the help desk. And I don't want to talk too much about it just because it's somewhat personal, I guess, to them. But the whole point is looking at the data and seeing trends and analyzing it and figuring out kind of like work streams. Like, so I put together work streams and where they could go once they kind of go through the analysis. And once again, they were super, gracious about wanting to kind of take a look at that data. But the data was coming from other sources, from Salesforce, from CRM tools, pulling it together, creating some models, finding someone who's willing to kind of create the models. And yes, data is the most important thing because you have to look for patterns,
Yep.
and patterns drive repeatability, and repeatability drives growth.
Amen. Yes. And it is what I one of the observations I make is you companies that are growing quickly, double digit growth are measuring their customer data. They're measuring it to a pretty granular level, right?
Mhm.
They're looking at different trends. They're seeing what's working in their funnel through their customer experience. And that's just, if you're not doing that, you're guessing
Right,
what is working and what isn't.
right.
Probably
And that's
wrong.
why, when they kind of reach a certain stage and eventually go public, there's whole teams of people who are data insight people and data ops people and rev ops people. It's all about taking the numbers and looking at it and analyzing it for looking for successful patterns. Yeah, for
So,
sure.
so when you get started with an organization to help them improve, what is customer success?
Okay. Well, it's kind of the term can mean different things to different companies, sort of
Yeah.
depending on like what stage the company is in. So, and I know the focus of this is kind of early stage companies, but I think it's somewhat helpful to understand it from a public company viewpoint too. So, the definition really is enabling all kinds of activities that will allow your customer to be successful with the application, the product, or the service, so
Mhm.
that they have a healthy interaction with it, so that it drives the next outcome. And so with a SaaS application, it's usually driving a renewal, but it could be something else that it drives, like maybe more transactions and use of the product or whatever. But that outcome has to be super defined. So in large kind of public companies, like when I worked at Oracle, we had, huge teams of customer success. It was enterprise, mid-market, hub, all sorts of different outcomes that were calibrated against the level of the customer. And, we were obviously driving the renewal because it's always about the revenue. But in an earlier stage company, um, it's really about kind of, honing in on what that product is and making sure that you have everything really closely tied with your customer to enable a really healthy experience with that product. And I can talk a little bit more about what that could be, but, um, and then driving it to an outcome and defining that outcome. So maybe the outcome is the renewal, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it should probably be because it should be kind of revenue driven, but, if
Yeah.
it's
No,
some other kind of a product, maybe it's not a renewal.
it could be another product, right? It could be another service. It could be an upsell or a cross sell or something, right?
Right.
It's continuously creating the work that you do as a business to get a new customer. It's
Mhm.
always important to figure out, how do you keep that customer? What does that look like? Right.
Right. Yeah. And that's the continuous improvement piece of optimization, right? So, uh, we like to think of it in sort of the framework of a life cycle, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because everything kind of has to kind of go around, right? So, the first part of the life cycle is product adoption, right? So you want to really kind of understand what's driving your customers to use the product. Because if they don't use it and they buy it and it just sits on a shelf and becomes shelfware, then you're obviously not going to get the outcome. So, driving product adoption is usually a function of a customer success person working with a salesperson, working with product marketing, working with other team members, right? So, driving product adoption and then driving the implementation and then driving the success of the product all the way through to the renewal. So that's kind of like the life cycle. And then Coco, you mentioned upsell in client expansion, right?
Right.
So
Right. Right.
um, really, this is one of the things I've noticed with early stage companies. They'll have like a specific product that could be a niche product. So there might not be an upsell type of journey for the customer because they haven't grown it big yet.
Yeah.
Right.
It
So
doesn't exist yet.
it
Right.
doesn't exist yet. Right. So, like obviously with like an Oracle, there were 4,000 products. So there was always something to sell. But with, some of these smaller products, it's kind of a niche product. So what you're looking for then is if you have a customer that's a Fortune 100 customer, is going into other divisions and other departments to use the product and leveraging the reference of a healthy sale. So in that case, the referenceability for the customer success manager becomes a key motion and a key KPI for this customer success manager because they want to drive referenceability to sell it again to somebody else in this large corporation. So it all depends again on, what the product is or the solution, and then how it kind of connects to
Yeah.
what other kind of systems you have in place.
And how would you guide a founder with, a couple $1,000,000 of revenue and growing, but struggling? How would you guide them to think about customer success, product adoption, and client expansion? How would you sort of methodically help them think about that?
Yeah, so I mean, that's really it's a good question, and it's a hard question too, right? So,
Depends on the answer to the first question, right? Because you
yes.
might ask a different second question.
So,
What do you think about it?
I think really starting with understanding the ROI on the product. So, what's the value the product brings to the customer? Okay, it has to derive value. So, I'll give you an example with Swarm Vision. Susan and I did a very lengthy ROI project. I went out and I interviewed all her customers, and we drove key metrics that were ROI driven on how to drive, innovation talent and what it meant by driving more dollars for big projects. And we had really, really specific KPIs. So I'm using that as an example. So you has to be pretty specific on the ROI and the value, because once you know that, it's a little bit, all the other pieces kind of fall into place because you know then like um, how to take that message and then take it to a different department, another division. So it's really, really understanding your customers' key business drivers and
Mhm.
the value that the product or the solution is bringing to the company. And
Right.
really being, to use your word, really thoughtful about it and being, precise, creating ROI modeling is in and of itself a fairly, you know, audacious task.
It is, right? I mean, it's who's my customer? What do they need? How am I going to deliver that a product that gives them that value? And what is the value? How do you demonstrate that they are getting that value from the product?
Right. Because otherwise then you're not going to have a renewal, right?
Exactly. And you have no you're not meeting the purpose of your business. You're the purpose of your business to be of service and to have a purpose that is larger than just simply to, you're not going to make money if you don't provide value, and you're
Right.
not going to make impact if you don't provide value.
Yeah, and you can take a page out of the book from, an oracle. Yeah, obviously for me, since I was there for so many years, on really understanding the value drivers of the product and connecting that with choosing people who are subject matter experts. This was, kind of in a customer success function. They don't have to be like deep product people, but like if you're selling, an HR talent management application as an example, and you're selling into HR people, the customer success manager, it's good for them to kind of have a familiarity with that whole industry sector so that when they're going in and they're talking to this person, they kind of just have like a comfort level. And then also having a mentality where you're business development oriented. So a little bit of consultation, a little bit of business development, because ultimately you're selling, right? You might not have a direct quota to sell, but everything you do when you touch the client from my point of view is selling. I used to always
Yeah.
talk about this with, different CSMs that I was, in my teams. It's like, you look at every opportunity as a selling opportunity because you're the face of the customer, you're the face of the product or the solution, and you want to make sure that your customer is having the best experience possible with that product.
Mhm.
So you're always looking for opportunities and ways to improve their experience so that they can buy more.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. And so how do you know if they are it would be pretty late in the game if you wait till the next annual subscription to find out whether or not they've adopted the product, right? How do you find out? What are the things that you can do to measure that?
Yeah, well, a lot of different things, and that's part of the role of a CSM is there's, key deliverables that they focus on uh, during their kind of life cycle engagement with the client. So, yeah, I'm a big proponent of doing quarterly business reviews. So
Mhm.
you're in the face of the customer quarterly, and you have, okay, these are the objectives we set for the product. You wanted to use it to, track this X amount of applicants, this amount of talent, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
it's great to set all those up while you're, in the sales cycle. So you understand how the product is being used. And then you're there as a customer success manager helping drive those outcomes because usually the rep is moving on to trying to close another deal, right? So
Mhm.
you're the face of the customer while they're implementing and while they're using it. So quarterly business reviews, large companies have telemetry types of metrics, how
Yeah.
many times a customer's logging in, and they use
Yeah.
that. That's a little daunting for a startup. Um, so, for startups, you might have, a person having multiple roles, and it could be something as simple as the old fashioned check in every other week,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You have a cadence that you set up every other week with the client, and if the client doesn't want to give you too much time, you do a 15-minute check-in.
Mhm.
But it's just really, really important to have that continuity so you know exactly how they're using the application.
Mhm.
So once again, could be larger companies, it's super defined, all sorts of metrics, all sorts of dashboards,
Mhm.
startup, it's the basics.
Yes. It's this, and it will, the companies that are growing versus the companies that aren't are doing something. They're having these interactions every other week, or they're having these interactions once a quarter. They're checking in, they're finding out. And so these are simple ways that, if you're not, as a listener, already doing something like this, checking in with your customers to find out, how are they doing, right? How's the product? Is it meeting their needs? Did it help them overcome whatever that goal is? Are they, if it's the talent retention product, have they retained more employees, right? Have they seen a value from whatever product it is?
Right. Yeah. And the funny thing too is that it's so easy to talk about,
Oh
but
yeah.
yet customers and clients will be so busy that they don't measure it because they're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. Because you are asking them to measure it or allowing you to measure it or allowing you to do it together, right?
Right.
So uh the most successful outcome is that you define the measurements together and you do it on a regular basis. And so that's the most ideal situation.
That's wonderful. Well, that's great. Um, so you have really significant experience selling into Fortune 100 space. And sometimes we have new businesses, startup SaaS companies that are focused on the enterprise space. And what would you say, or what guidance would you give to someone who really wants to grow into that space, or even the Fortune 1000 space, right?
Yeah. So there's a number of gotchas that I've seen happen with startups. And the first one is just making sure that you have all the technical requirements in place. So if you go in to sell into a large, Fortune 250 company, they're going to have all these sort of legacy backend systems. So if you're going in with a SaaS system, there's all these protocols and security protocols and that you have to be able to meet to even to have any kind of connection. So and it's not taken lightly because they have huge CISO teams who will send you the checklist and you have to have all these protocols. So the first thing is having the technological rigor
Yeah.
of, so, a early stage SaaS technical product that is usually interfacing with something, right?
Yes.
So so all
Nothing,
those,
nothing stands alone.
no. So all those interfaces and all those connections, you have to have it, bulletproofed, written up saying, these are the requirements that we meet, security protocols and so forth. So that's been an eye opener that I hear over and over again.
Mhm.
Um, it's a little bit easier sometimes with founders who are engineers. Um, like our Goy
Yes.
founder's an engineer, so it's kind of easy for him. Um, I've also worked with other founders, male or female, where it's kind of a little bit more of like a shocker. So that's the first thing. The second thing is in Fortune, 100, 1000 companies, uh, the process is different, right? Because you're usually have to go in with a pilot. It's usually longer. There's usually more people. Um, uh, there's more presentations. There's more everything, and more people.
Right. Well, and it has so many more, downstream effects, and so more minds, need to be involved, and it's how these big corporations work. So you have to have experience in that in some way, right?
Like,
It's very hard. Like my experience, my advice is always to look for somebody who has that experience, right? Or have it yourself, right?
yeah.
It's
Or
really
have
hard.
someone on your team, like a
Yes,
technology officer or something like that, who can handle that. Um, the third point, Coco, I didn't want to forget what it was, is that selling into large Fortune 1000 companies is that you have to be really uh, mindful of the differentiation.
yeah,
Yeah. And being super clear on how you're differentiating. And then the other thing I would say is make sure you have an NDA, because anytime you go into a really large corporation like that, they have so many people that, they literally could recreate it. And so you want to be really protected with a good NDA. So that was another thing I wanted to just put out there as a kind of a tip.
that is a really good point, right? Like, because they probably have a whole team that could build whatever it is, much, right there at their fingertips. Um, Very helpful. And so, um, have you helped companies try to figure this out? Is this
Yeah,
something you have?
yeah,
Yeah.
I have. Yeah, yeah, I have, and it's a blast.
It's a lot of fun. Well, and that's see, one of the
They
things that
it
I
you know,
think.
the funny thing is they kinda like you go in, like, uh, we were doing a presentation down at the St. Francis with a really big hotel downtown with really big corporation. In, the early stage, there's like, there's me with all my experience, and they kinda like I feel like they look at you like, "Hmm, do we have to get past her? Like, is she the gatekeeper?" Because it's always been the other way around, right? Because I'm super skeptical of everything just because I've had so much experience, right? Like, I've seen everything. So that's when I say that, it's kind of a worthwhile, kind of beneficial relationship back and forth, right? So
Absolutely. And I know that you do a fair amount of you're on boards now, you're an advisor. And so it's a lot of times in my role as an angel investor, I I see teams come forward and they have all these pieces that are there, but there's a missing piece. And a missing piece is if they're trying to sell into a big, a Fortune 100 or a Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000, if they don't have that experience on their team, they need it from someone like you.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and
They need it.
yeah, and you can go out and they could bring in have an advisor come in.
That's
I
right.
actually I go on calls, right? So,
Yes.
um,
Yes. That
yeah.
makes a huge difference
Mhm.
because we know that and I would say even if you're not looking for investors, opening those doors, thinking the way that those big companies think, understanding
Mhm.
how they make decisions, how they go, when and how they decide that they need something, and what's going to put it into the budget, right? And like all the pieces in the puzzle of making it be a yes. It takes a lot of experience, and a lot of times it takes relationships too, right? Like you can't like you have been working in this business for a long time, so you know people in a
Yeah,
lot of
I mean,
places.
right, and usually, like a lot of the advisor contracts, that's what one of the criteria is,
Yeah.
bringing them into, and even board roles too. They want your contacts, right? So, I just think with an earlier stage company, they want your contacts and your experiences, everything. But I think you can almost go one step further by ingratiating yourself into helping them with the actual sales process. I mean, I
Yeah.
do that. I don't know if I do it because I enjoy it so much or because, uh, you know, at the end of the day, it's helping to drive the value of the equity. So anyways,
That's what you do. Yeah. So I'm so happy that you could share all of this with us. I really want to just sort of take a moment and let everybody know who's listening that someone like Marianne is really you cannot imagine how valuable this experience is. When you're growing a business, and if you don't have experience with customer success and measuring it and creating customer journeys and customer adoption, product adoption, um, these are things that will halt your growth. And if you don't have that experience, especially going into a big company, you're just going to frustrate yourself trying to do it on your own. So this is a part of your business, I would encourage you to consider working with Marianne or somebody else that's like her that will help you fill in those incredible gaps. You've had, several decades of experience on this, and none of us are going to learn that through a webinar overnight. Right? I mean, it's really rich and powerful. Um, it's a puzzle, growth is a puzzle we can solve,
yeah,
but sometimes it's better to just bring somebody in who can see through
yeah.
says
And I think, you know, there's something also to be said for, women helping other women, right? So,
exactly.
yeah. So, uh, I think my journey and many women's journey being in tech in the 90s, and I actually started in the late 80s. It was a tough go for us. I was the only female many, many times, many, many meetings. And the policies didn't exist back then. Like my 28-year-old daughter is a whole different experience than what we had, working in the 90s as an only female. So I think there's many of us out there that really want to give back and help other women. So, and I'm one of them. So, I'm always available on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to reach out to me, happy to lend an ear, give my opinion.
Hey, we can all use good opinions. When lots of wisdom from you. So with that, what would be one last bit of wisdom you would want to give to women founders who are growing their visionary businesses and looking for any insights you can give them?
Just don't give up, keep persevering. And Kelly Stephen Wass' book was really, so that's what it's all about. It's just, the courage to persevere. Uh, that's inspirational. There are many women founders out there that have been successful, and they always say the same thing. You have to lead with courage. You can't give up and find other people to surround yourself with to lift you up, right? So um take it from a standpoint of abundance. There's all these resources out there. Don't be afraid to ask. That would be my advice.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask for advice, for support,
Yeah,
right?
and don't be embarrassed about learning something new. I mean, I'm still out there because I want to continue to learning. I learn new things every day. Uh, and if you're out there trying to make your company successful, nobody expects you to know the answers to everything.
Mm-mm.
So embrace it and lean on other people.
Exactly. Well said. Thank you so much. And
You.
really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on Women Get Funded Show. Thank you for illuminating the path to unlocking opportunities for growth and prosperity for women led enterprises. I believe, and I know you do too, that the world is made better by women led business. So let's all go make the world a better place.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Coco.
Thank you. Are you ready to build a business that leads in both impact and profit? Discover the Force for Good book, a guide for purpose-led leaders who want to accelerate impact, scale, and profit. Pre-order your copy today at www.aforceforgood.biz/book and receive immediate access to 30 plus valuable tools for you and your team. Join the Force for Good movement. Pre-order your copy now at www.aforceforgood.biz/book.